Okay guys, welcome to this month's Culinary Hour. I'm going to take a break from international aspect of it and concentrate on America for a while. American regional cuisine, there's so many different racial stocks involved in the formation of this country as we know it today. Oh, thanks, man. That, I feel like I covered enough other countries to show you where kind of like indigenous foods come from and the food preparation. So I'm going to concentrate on New England, first of all. If you look at your first page on your fact sheet, New England is a region made up of Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Connecticut, and Rhode Island. It is bordered in the east by the Atlantic and in the north by Canada. Summer season is mild, but the winter season in Maine can be quite cold. New England, for the most part, was settled by the British and French, and the cuisine tends to be basic but has a wide variety because of the use of native ingredients. That's very important because the settlers that came to New England, first of all, have their own recipes they brought with them, but didn't have the ingredients, so they had brought their own cooking methods, but they had a tendency to use the native squashes and the native meat, like turkeys and things like that in the area, to substitute for what they were used to in their own native countries. So they came here with their own methods and their own recipes, but they looked around for viable substitutions, so it created a lot of the food that we have today. Traditional dishes include chowders, boiled dinner, baked beans, Indian pudding, clam bakes, Johnny cakes, cobblers, and apple pie. Johnny cakes is a cornmeal cake. So it's basically cornmeal with eggs. It's almost in the version of like a pancake. And you cook it in like a flat pan, like a steel pan or something like that, and like cook it off like a pancake with it. Serve with maple syrup. Common indigenous meats include wild game, turkey and duck, fish, salmon, flounder, clams, and lobster. Vegetables, native are corn, potatoes, and cabbage. You can see that today. Use the cabbage for a slaw, for a side dish for the crab cakes. Specialties include maple syrup and fiddlehead ferns. Fiddlehead ferns, I don't know if you see them in the store, it's kind of like a long green stem. It kind of like goes into a circle. Those are fiddlehead ferns, those are native to this area. They're good, right?
Okay.
A little olive oil and garlic, they taste great. Yeah. New England is best known for its seafood, dairy products, and classic produce such as blueberries and cranberries. The peninsula of Maine is the largest producer of lobster in America. The most popular dish is a lobster roll. Anybody have a lobster roll? Mm-hmm. Basically, you boil the lobster, a little mayonnaise, dill, whatever you like, on a soft white roll, and pretty much that's it. Clams from raw to fried are another specialty of New England. Chowder is a significant aspect of the cuisine. New England clam chowder has existed since the 1830s. Now that is the milk-based chowder. Later on you'll see a Manhattan-based chowder. That came with the Portuguese immigrants. Brought tomatoes with them, and they didn't use the dairy product. So the New England clam, actually New England is the clam base. The Manhattan one is the tomato base. That was from Portuguese settlers in that area. Vermont is a large producer of maple syrup in the U.S. Maple syrup was first discovered by the Algonquin tribes in 2011. Vermont produced 1,140,000 gallons in that year.
Ooh, wow.
And that's only 5% of the total world production. New England is known for its dairy products, and Vermont cheddar is considered the highest quality in the country. Vermont is also home to Ben & Jerry's. Two friends who started the company in '78. Unique flavor combinations are now shipped over to 30 countries. I don't know if anybody have been there. If you go to Ben & Jerry's, they tried the unique flavors that they have is really is prized by like 30 countries in the world. But they have actually a graveyard on site where they have like the flavor combination that never sold it. They actually mass produced like a lot of like 50 some odd flavors, but they have actually headstones of the flavors that didn't make it in the marketplace, and they just bury them. And that's what it is. So if you go on their business site, you'll see that. Okay, we're going to concentrate. If you look on the second page, crab cakes. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about also the cooking method of this, and also actually crab cakes. There's so many ways to make this. The recipe that I have, I actually got from one of my instructors, the Culinary Chef Koyok, one of my favorite chefs that I had there. I augmented a little bit, a couple different things. You can have, sometimes people make a crab cake, they will saute it and they nail it with a bunch of breadcrumbs, and you can't taste the flavor of the fish and the crab, and I hate that because you're tasting like a biscuit flecked with fish. I want to highlight the fish, so what I do is half crab, half cod in my crab cakes. A little bit of binder. I'll go down the ingredients. First of all, butter, everybody knows, onion, garlic, red and bell pepper, minced fine, leeks, salt, pepper, mustard, Worcestershire sauce. The two ingredients that you see here is fiends herbes chopped. Fiends herbes is a French term. That's a combination of chervil, chives, tarragon, and parsley in the exact same amount. So I need 2 ounces here. So I have a ½ ounce of chervil, ½ ounce of parsley, tarragon, and chives. Cayenne pepper. Old Bay seasoning, that's a marketing seasoning. It's basically celery seed and paprika, but it's common, developed in New England. And miedapon. Miedapon is breadcrumb, but the difference between that and a regular breadcrumb is that if you take fresh bread and don't dry it out, and you pulverize it into a crumb, that's miedapon, it's fresh breadcrumb. Take a loaf of white bread, put it in a processor, that's what it is. The reason for that is because if I add a dry breadcrumb, it will extract so much moisture and you have like a pasty taste in your texture in your crab cake, so I don't do that. I use a fresh breadcrumb, it already has the moisture in it. I just need it as a binder with the egg yolk. Egg yolk is used here as a binder as well too, instead of the whole white, because the white has a tendency to bind it too much. It gets a little tougher, and sometimes when that happens, it'll bind, and you bake it, and it puffs up and it cracks the crab cake. So only the egg yolk for richness, first of all, in the binder, because it's a high intense heat, because I'm going to pan fry it. First step is going to be, get your pan a little hot. I got it going in here. Basic saute. First of all, I'm going to mince some onions up. Fine. I have a rough chop on these now. The whole idea is this: you don't want to caramelize the onions. You just want to get that raw flavor out of your vegetables that I'm adding right now. So I'm looking for like what they call translucency. The edges, you kind of like see through them, but you don't want to fully cook and caramelize the sugars. I test that pan with a tiny bit of oil because if I add the butter first, the milk proteins would burn. So now I'm going to add the butter to melt and finish sauteing the onions. At this point I'm going to finally mince my peppers and my leeks. Just red and green bell pepper.
Where's your garlic?
It's coming. The questions are starting. It's right there. I know. Wait for the onions to cook first so I don't burn it. I look for it minced because I want it to spread out the whole crab cake. I don't want too large of a piece because it'll stop the binding, but I want little pieces in there so each crab cake will have some in there. I see. We're at the stage now of translucency. The onions are kind of like falling apart, but they're not caramelized yet. Now I add the garlic. If I add the garlic too much in the beginning, it would burn. It would make the whole crab cake bitter. So I have to wait for it. I'm just looking to develop the aroma now. At this point, I'll add my peppers and my leeks. all I'm trying to do is get that raw taste of the vegetable and render the moisture out. That's why I'm using a saute pan here. And that brings me to my next kind of blurb. We talked about saute before. The whole idea of sauteing is you want to concentrate whatever you're putting in the pan, but you want to limit the moisture. And that's why the configuration of the pan is what it is, because if I had a straight-sided pan, all the vapors that are coming off here, the water, which I'm trying to get rid of, will collect and drip down your product. It will take forever to saute. So when you're sauteing, you're going at a high heat with a little bit of oil, but you want to look to see the water is evaporating and concentrating the flavors of everything that's in that pan. So basically it takes a little while to get that raw flavor, but I want to eliminate the water. The water is good insurance policy. It helps you to watch so it doesn't burn. But at the same time, you want to eliminate it at a good pace because you want to taste the flavor of the ingredients that they have there. It's basically tasteless. So by sauteing it, you're concentrating the flavor with every pan. Now, the whole idea of pan frying, which is this pan right here, I'll talk about it, is there's a difference between sauteing and pan frying. When the crab cake is done, you'll see I'll be pan frying them, I won't be sauteing them. The difference is this: if I had a chicken breast and I want to saute it, I pan it very thin, a little oil, high heat. And then I take the chicken breast out, deglaze the pan with the developed little fond in the bottom pan, and the sauce is developed, put the major ingredient back in. When I pan fry, this oil has got a lot more than if I saute. Like when I saute, about a tablespoon, maybe for a chicken breast. Over here I have a couple cups. So what happens is when I saute, I'm using a little bit of oil and high heat. When I pan fry, I'm using a lot of oil and less heat because what I'm cooking is much thicker and cut. The crab cake is that thick versus like a paillard or a chicken breast, which is that thin. Okay? And also, when I add this much oil, I cannot develop my sauce in the pan. Whenever you pan fry something like the crab cake today, the sauce is always made separate and served separate because I will never develop what I call that fond, the bottom of the pan. Remember I talked about the fond when you saute, all the meat that sticks to the bottom of the pan goes back in your sauce. I will never develop that because there's such a low heat and high oil there, I will never develop that. So when you saute, the sauce is always developed in your pan. When you pan fry, the sauce is always separate. It's always reserved for thicker cuts of meat versus thinner cuts of meat. Okay, so you see both of them today. Right now I'm just sauteing. Now at this point in time, it's reduced to what they call au sèche, almost dry. And at this point in time, I'll add my Worcestershire. Some mustard. My fresh herbs. Salt, pepper, cayenne and lemon juice. Can you smell the tarragon? Fresh herbs? Yeah. At this point in time, I'm going to add my mustard and my mayonnaise. Oh, I'm sorry, flour. Right here. Now the flour, residual fat that's in the pan, is going to make what they call a roux. This is going to be one of my binding agents in the crab cake. So what we're going to do is take all that fat that's in the bottom of the pan, to make it a thick consistency like this. So it's kind of pasty, but not. Then I have my mustard. There's a Dijon mustard for this. You can use a Creole mustard too. And mayonnaise. Put this on the side to cool a bit. Now this pan right here, I have cod loin. Let's take it from this part of the fish. The cod loin, I just dice it up. It's raw. And this is blue crab meat. I like the colossal size because through mechanical mixing of the product, it'll shred a little bit. So I like these big pieces of crab so it's picked through. Nice blue crab. So I do 1-to-1 mixture of crab and cod. At this point I add saute ingredients. The final ingredient I have to add is egg yolks. But obviously, if you're going to make the crab cakes ahead of time, you want to make sure that filling is cooled down all the way because you're actually starting to cook the fish. So you want to go all the way. But since the fact is I'm going to cook it now, I don't have to worry about that. If I add the egg yolks, typically you add the egg yolks to that filling and keep them aside, but I will not add them now because you get scrambled eggs. So what I'm going to do is like temper the heat of that filling with the cold fish. And that's going to be my insurance policy when I add my eggs so that they don't scramble on me. That's just about body temperature right now. So at this point I'm going to add my 2 egg yolks. And once again I use the meat pan to bind. I use panko, you'll taste them today. I use panko breadcrumbs on the outside because I like that crunch on the outside. But if I use the panko in here right now, it would just suck up most of the moisture. You still get like a dry crunch in some of the breadcrumbs if it doesn't go all the way. So I use this as a nice binder. It's just fresh white breadcrumbs. Take a loaf of white bread and just pulverize it in the processor. We're just looking just to bind it barely. But sometimes you go out and you see like crab cakes that are loaded with bread. You don't see much meat. It's not really a crab cake. So this is what I kind of look for. See, you have like big collops of the seafood in there, just slightly bound in between with everything. Some of the breadcrumbs. Okay, now the final stage, if you look at the last 2 ingredients on the recipe list, it calls for meat pan or in the White River seasoning or the Old Bay seasoning. So that's what I have in this pan right here. It's just, this is where I use the dry breadcrumbs for the outside for the texture of it because I want that crunch on the outside. So I get about a 2-ounce portion. Just cover it very lightly. Now what I'm looking for is what they call, the French call the stage of doré, just means golden. The fish is going to cook very quickly. The crab and cod cook very quick. So I'm going to put this in here. Over here to a lower heat, finish cooking. It takes about like 2 minutes aside. The seafood is done. Any questions?
I was thinking of people that have, what's that?
Gluten allergies?
Oh, yeah.
You could use, if you use, well the whole idea of the bread, first of all, is because the gluten is what you want. It's a protein. It sits in the flour, so as a binding agent when it's exposed to heat, it will contract and act as your bite. If you use like a non-gluten, which is a rice flour, you won't get that as much. So you might want to consider adding a little more butter and a little more flour to your roux in that first stage as a binder, okay? Because it does act as a binder, the gluten, when it's activated with the heat. So the rice is very low in gluten, not at all. So you want to do something else like that, you know? Okay, what we're going to do is traditionally can serve it with a warm coleslaw. It's made traditional coleslaw on the side here. This is nothing more than rice wine vinegar with sugar, some celery seed, pepper, shredded red cabbage, and green cabbage with a touch of cranberries to keep in with the area. So I use cranberries. Yes.
What did you say was the substitution for Old Bay? Celery, salt, and paprika?
Yeah, Old Bay is really a combination of salt, pepper, paprika, celery salt, and there's some other herbs too. That they just manufacture like that. So that's a New England kind of spice mix, so I just decided to use it. But it's mostly celery salt.
Okay.
Yeah, and paprika being there, sure. And now if you look on the recipe, typically I used to make a tartar sauce. I find that to be very sweet, so what I make is a mustard sauce. this particular one on the recipe. You'll find it here. That's pretty much the recipe there I'm going to use on the side of the crab. I don't like sweetness with this. I like the acid that the vinegar gives and the mustard too as well. So what you're looking for is something like that. That's your finished product right there. So we'll give everybody a taste. All right. So I'm going to start panning up some stuff. I have them pre-made, pre-fried, keeping the warming oven here. So pretty much what you're looking for is like a 2-ounce portion, about this size. So you're looking